Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by Rick Vavro and Austin Underground. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined this morning by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton. Guys, tell us where you're checking in from, what you're drinking. Be sure to get your questions in. We'll get to as many of those as we can here in just a little bit. But first, let's talk about football. The team obviously going to be back on the practice field today. Now, no media viewing window. And Sark isn't meeting with the media, but the players are afterward. What do you think we'll hear from them?
We'll see who I'm most interested, Jerry. It depends on who he sends out there, right? I'm most interested in who he sends out there because I thought the first time around when he sent players to the media, it was Quinn Ewers, and then to a little bit of a surprise, he sent David Benda. Who's he going to send out there today? Because I don't think he's going to send somebody that he thinks is not let's put it this way, not a leader potentially of the team, or not someone that's core to the team that he feels confident. So let's see who he has a little bit of faith in. I'm not saying that's the only person he has faith in by any stretch, or the only people, but it does give you an idea of what he's thinking mentally behind the scenes a little bit when he puts someone out as the face of the team this early in the process.
Yeah, no, for sure. We're talking about guys that could be on a leadership council, right? Guys that he knows will deliver the message of Texas football this spring, kind of the message that Sark and the staff want out from the players this spring, the guys who kind of understand all of this, and I think are leaning to be on that leadership council. I would love it if he threw us a curveball and threw out Trey Moore and Isaiah Bond today, just to hear from the new guys, but that would actually surprise me a little bit.
All right, y'all. Well, Jerry, I know that you obviously were at a big track meet yesterday. You saw a lot of big-time prospects. You had a lot of news. I don't know where you want to begin, but I'm going to let you take the lead, and I'll follow.
Well, I want to say this. Jerry was in recruit heaven yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, I know that. Look, I mean, I woke up in Rockdale on Wednesday morning, and I went to see Jackson Blackwell, a defensive lineman at Lorena, who's going to visit April 11th. I'm starting with him because this is the ongoing evaluation process by Texas. This is a kid that's at one of the smaller schools from around Waco. They won a state championship his freshman year. They went about 4 rounds this year. But he's a kid who went to the Under Armour camp in Dallas and blew up. And he's got official visits to Arizona, Baylor, Houston. He's at TCU tomorrow, I believe. He's going to be at Texas April 11th. They're taking a serious look at him. He's 6'2.5", 311, really good feet. Recent state powerlifting meet, he squatted 700 pounds. I mean, strong kid, right? Texas is looking at him at D-line. Everybody's recruiting him at D-line. I'm here to tell you he'd be just as good as an offensive lineman, maybe a center. I mean, I think the kid's really talented. So I went to Cameron, Texas. Shout out Billy Pittman, hometown of Billy Pittman. But I went to that district track meet, was at Cameron for a little while yesterday, just to see him in person, watch him move. He was throwing the discus. I couldn't stay for when he threw the shot, just to get a look at him, see, just to get some thoughts on him, which I like the kid as a prospect. I'll be real. I like the kid. And then I went up to Waxahachie for the ultimate district meet, the District of Doom, as Blake calls it. It's maybe more difficult in track than football. But, just think about, from my perspective, you walk onto the football field there, and the tracks around the football field, obviously at Waxahachie ISD Stadium there. That's not the name of it. But and the first guy I see is Jordan Coleman. He had just got done throwing the shot. So I start off at 6'5", 360. All right, so it's going to be a good day. All those guys are going to be there. So Jordan Coleman. Then I went to Elijah Barnes. Then I went and talked to Keelan Russell and DeCorian Moore. Saw Caden Durham going to LSU. Obviously, this is Jordan Coleman, big Jordan offensive lineman. Him and his brother Devin are going to visit Texas this weekend unofficially. They have their June 21st through 23rd official visit set up. Jordan Coleman, all a 6'5", 360, squat 600 pounds. Really plays for Marcus Hutchins, who we had on the show Marcus Hutchins, the offensive line coach at Cedar Hill, who played at DeSoto and University of Texas, obviously on the offensive line. But these are two guys, Jordan Coleman and Devin Coleman, that, it's a loaded group of offensive linemen in the state of Texas. So they didn't get a lot of fanfare before the season. But I'm here to tell you right now, I think they might be able to both commit to Texas right now. So I'm going to throw y'all a little bit of a bone this morning. It wouldn't shock me if both those guys don't have committable offers right now. And this is what Jordan had to say yesterday, and that says it all. I heard the food's going to be real good. That's what a 565-pound person should say. I think I keep adding 5 pounds every time I say his name. 6'5", 360. That's what he should say. But they're very high on Texas. Jordan also has Oklahoma set up June 14th through 16th for an official visit as well. Tennessee, Ole Miss, a lot of people coming after him. His brother Devin does not throw the shot put, so he had to go to class yesterday. I'd probably revisit that decision. But, Devin is a guy who was a D lineman until this year. Now he's an offensive guard, and his recruitment has taken off since his guard tape got out there. They're both coming in Saturday, and I think Texas likes both those guys a lot. And then Elijah Barnes. Look, linebacker from Skyline. And Bobby gave a funny text yesterday because Elijah Barnes at 6'2.5", 6'3", 230 pounds ran the 100 meters yesterday. And he ran a 10.96 100 meters at 230 pounds. Was it downwind a little bit? So it's probably 11-1 after the wind calculation. But I'm here to tell you, Bobby, how many 6'3", 230s are running the 100 meters and running it. I don't care if it was a little winddated. Once you can put 10.96 on your bio at 230, that's pretty good stuff. But again, he'll be at Texas this weekend. Elijah Barnes, one of the top linebackers in the country. He just talked with Sark. I believe it was a Monday. So Sark, Johnny Nansen, those guys are on Elijah Barnes. I think this is a kid Texas in a pretty good spot with. He's been to Ohio State. He's got some visits coming up, obviously official visits. He has Texas June 21st through 23rd. This is a little bit of what he had to say yesterday. I'll have more from these guys at ontexasfootball.com around lunchtime. Yes, Blake Jester, 10.96 at 230. Those are the linebackers you want to recruit in the SEC, by the way.
I mean, it's getting ridiculous. I mean, it was 2 days ago, it was Riley Pettijohn with like a 10.77. Yep. Then Nick Townsend, the tight end, runs a 10.9 down in Houston that Texas is after. And then another line. These aren't wide receiver times.
Right.
I mean, just to be clear, they're big athletes. And I think that people need to appreciate, that's legit stuff. I mean, I bet there aren't 5 linebackers, maybe 7 to 8 in the NFL that ran sub 11 flat 100 meters.
And I want to say this on Elijah Barnes. As good a football prospect as he is, he's a better dude now. I'm just telling you, I've been around him a few times now, just talking to him. I have a healthy respect for Elijah Barnes as a guy. And I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of this kid, young man. He's going to maximize his talent. He's going places, that I'll say. And then obviously, Blake, you got to bring up the tweet of Elijah Barnes and DeCorian Moore running that 100 meters. So yep. DeCorian Moore ran a 10.4 yesterday downwind. So about on track with 10.55, right? 10.5 is his best time. So that's Barnes in lane 2, the big dude. And that's DeCorian Moore there in lane 5. Obviously, that's a really fast heat of 100-meter prelim, right? The second place guy, he ran about 10.46 on that one. Caden Durham ran in the next heat. But there you see big Elijah Barnes, man. And you know what else that speaks to, Bobby? That speaks to competitiveness.
I was going to say, how many linebackers run the 100? I mean, that's what I was getting at with the NFL comment. They don't do it. I mean, he's in lane 2. He's finishing there in the red shirt. Moore won that heat clearly in lane 5. I mean, look, my question on all of this is I think the ante has been up in Austin.
Yeah.
As far as who they're going after, the caliber of athlete they're going after. And it's not just in the state of Texas. It's nationwide. And so I look at that and just say, you know what, put a check mark by what Steve Sarkisian's doing. I mean, came out on Tuesday and talked about Ryan Wingo, the wide receiver from St. Louis.
Yeah.
You know, it's not Texas is always going to use Texas as the home base in recruiting. I really believe that. And when you're 230 running 10-9, you should, right? I mean, but just because you're from the state of Texas doesn't mean that Sark and those guys are going to recruit you either. So I like I said, I think they're upping the ante in recruiting right now. And so that's why when I said I don't care that they're not shooting for a top 5 class right now with Sark. They're just shooting for whatever an elite class means.
Yes.
So if that's top 2 or 3 or number 1, whatever, he wants every player to try to be elite, as elite as possible. He's not just taking guys right now.
And to Bobby's point, that number 1, 2, 3, 4 class ranking stuff, a lot of that depends on how many guys you sign. I mean, just, you know, Georgia had 29 kids last year. I don't see Texas going to that number, right? So a lot of that, when you get into that top 5 range, there's different ways people calculate it, but a lot of it's how many guys you're signing. I mean, in the depth of that class. So just something to consider there. I want to mention Decorian Moore. Obviously, I spoke with Decorian Moore a little bit yesterday as well. He'll be on campus this Saturday with his mom. Obviously, a lot of his mom's family lives in Austin. She is from Austin. Shout out to Lanier High, where she went to high school. Wait, but what's Lanier's mascot? I can't ever remember Austin Lanier's mascot. But anyways, Texas, obviously, look, man, he's committed to LSU. He's going to be back April 20th for the spring game. You know, yes, Henry James, that's a great super chat, and I totally agree.
The Vikings, by the way.
The Vikings, Austin Lanier Vikings. Mom was track and volleyball there at Lanier High. But Decorian Moore, look, Texas, he's committed to LSU. Texas very, very much in this thing. Ohio State and Oregon are the other schools mentioned. But this is going to come down to a Texas LSU battle. And if you're Steve Sarkisian, you have a little confidence there. And if you're LSU, you know you're in for a fight.
I wonder if the mom went to high school with Albert Burdett. You remember the big center for Texas back in the 90s, played for Tom Penders?
By the way, it's a great point. It's not Lanier is no more. It's
is it Navarro now?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I thought. Hey, we need to say thank you to our sponsor each and every Thursday morning live stream, Coffee and Football, brought to you by our friends at Austin Underground. Since 2004, they've specialized in difficult underground and commercial installations. The team's engineering background gives Austin Underground the ability to perform work other firms often considered just too risky. Rick Vavro and his team offer an end-to-end client experience, including seamless communication, budgeting, staffing, and top-notch trade partners. And most importantly, they produce solid quality work each and every time. If you need something done that you think can't be done, give Austin Underground a call. Rick Vavro is the man for the job. He and his team, outstanding. Thank you, Rick, for your sponsorship of Thursday morning's Coffee and Football. Hey, Blake, I want to go to you next, but Blake, you had a little article you wrote yesterday on Texas football. Yes. You actually had an opportunity to talk to a couple of high school coaches that were Saturday or Friday's scrimmage / practice last Fridays. I want to give you the mic and give you a chance to tell people what you heard about Sark and the practice on Friday.
Yeah, so let me back up and preface this by saying that neither one of them are like big Texas fans. You know, like they don't know the roster like most of the people watching do, but they do pay attention, obviously, to what's going on down there, and they are familiar with the program. So they did go see both coaches at the same school, one a head coach, one a coordinator. And so I got to ask them a few questions and just kind of pick their brain. Again, we didn't get into player specifics since, you know, again, they're not huge Texas fans. But, you know, I asked them what their overall impressions were of the practice, what kind of stood out from a coaching perspective, if there was any position groups that stood out. And, you know, the main takeaway, in my opinion, guys, was they talked about two things. Number one, how much of a well-oiled machine it was. And both coaches said that, you know, in their own way. The head coach said it was incredibly well ran, that, you know, everybody just seemed to be on top of their game. And, you know, that the coaches were just coaching, like they were just constantly coaching. And the kids were were taking it all in. And then, the other one was talking about the communication between the staff and, how he felt like that's something that's often overlooked. But that he felt like that coaching or the Texas coaching staff was such great communicators, not only to the kids, but amongst themselves too, and sharing ideas and thoughts. And then the other thing that really stood out to me, guys, was they mentioned the buy-in. And the head coach, you can go read the article if you haven't already on Texas Football, but the head coach says, that's the culture that I'm trying to build, is what Texas has. And, he said there was no, there was no back talking, I guess, from the kids that, they were taking discipline as a team, or they were talking, and that everybody was just working towards a common goal, and that it was easily reflected on the practice field. So they walked away very impressed. And again, neither one of these guys are Texas fans, so it's not like they went down there, just hoping to see from a fan perspective. So it was really cool to hear that. As far as the position groups, when I asked about those, quarterback was named, wide receiver was named, both of those by the head coach. And then the coordinator said defensive end and safeties were two that stood out to him. And all that, a lot more in detail than what I just explained, but that's the gist of it there. But you can head on over to ontexasfootball.com to read that. And then Bobby also has some practice notes up from yesterday as well that you'll need to check out. So be sure to check out both of those things.
Yeah, I actually want to share a little bit of that here. It's very interesting because it kind of dovetailed into what you were talking about, Blake. And what I mean by that is you were talking about buy-in. Somebody told me no prima donnas on the team. Like nobody is acting like the cat's meow among the guys that are the true leaders of the team. And what that's doing is setting an expectation level for the rest of the team. And so when you use terms like, I just wrote it down, buy-in and culture and that sort of stuff, that's a good sign, in my opinion. That means you're getting those kinds of players that are willing to work hard, and it's a team. Somebody told me it feels more like a team than I right now.
Yeah,
there's no I in team. That's what they told me yesterday, and I wrote y'all on that on Texas Football. Some things being talked about behind the scenes right now are really, really positive for Texas football. Subtle signs that how many wins does that mean? We don't know. Right. But subtle signs that Sark has got this thing going again in the right direction beyond just the talent. Right. It's one thing to collect talent. Jerry always talking about it's not a collecting a talent, it's building a team. That's what you're trying to accomplish. Well, to do that, you don't just recruit well. You have to develop well. You have to put a culture around it. And then you have to have a system and strategy during games to make it happen. I mean, right now, I think that Sark got all of those boxes checked, or at least heading in the right direction.
For sure. For sure. All right, guys, we have a couple of super chats that we need to get out of the way real quick here. And this first one, and I don't know what currency that is, but there you go. I looked it up a little bit ago, and then I closed the tab.
I think it's Poland. I think it's a lot.
I think it's. I can't remember the actual name of it, but I do believe you're correct. But Jack says that's to help Bobby with the bar tab. Bobby, I'm going to let you tell folks about that again in case they missed that announcement yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. On April 20th, game day on spring game, we're going to be at the victory lap prior to the game at 11 a.m. We'll go and me and Jerry, and I think Rod's going to join us as well, maybe CJ. We're going to do a live show from there from 11 to 12 and then walk over to the stadium. You're welcome to join us. I'm going to try. I don't know if it's going to be that one or a different one where I'm going to buy everybody a beer, but I'm going to try to buy everybody a beer here coming up before the spring game. We appreciate you guys joining us each and every morning. We appreciate you watching us and coming to the message boards, asking questions, etc. It's our way of trying to give back a little bit because we enjoy this community. I mean, Blake, Jerry, and I, and Rod, and Bob, Coach Shipley's even talked about it. CJ as well, how we feel like we're part of a community and building a community. So we want to have a little fun with you guys if we get an opportunity to. So on game day on April 20th, we'll be at Victory Lap at 11 a.m. feel free to come by, shake our hands, hang out, do whatever you want to do. Get a keg of Big Red. There we go. If you want to rot your gut, by the way, you ever literally want to just like put acid into your gut. Now it's delicious on the way down. So there's no doubt about that, David. Big Red soda, man. That was the drink of choice in like 1983 in my youth.
Well, you heard it there. Bobby's got your first one, and then Jerry has the rest. He'll pick up the tab from there. All right, Henry.
So yeah, yesterday, by the way, my beef jerky of choice was No Man's Land. I just felt like that right there with that comment.
Henry James, BC, and Jerry, you read this a little bit ago, but he said Todd Orlando would have blitzed Barnes from the locker room.
Well, being at that Texas OU game where the safeties were 26 yards off the line of scrimmage, that's probably true.
Oh, man. All right, guys. Well, we're going to get to some questions now, and plenty of time to get your questions in, so please do so. And let's start here from the top. E. Kim says, good morning from Rockford, Illinois. Average number of points the offense will score this upcoming season. I know we've talked about this a little bit off and on, but what do y'all think?
My goal would be 31-32 in the games that matter. So your Michigan and your SEC games. I think if you average around 32 there, you're in a really good spot. I think for the season, it'll be higher than that because obviously you could put up 60 on UL Monroe, right? Or something. You could put up a crazy number on somebody. So it's going to be higher than that for the season. But I look at more the games, the Michigan and the SEC. If you can average 32, 31 and a half, 32 points a game, you're going to have a really good season.
I would say 31 to 33 and then 35 overall. I do want to add this. Hey, we got to ask the question, Jerry. I know you remember this. Who is the best wide receiver Texas will face this year? And we threw out some different guys, right?
Yeah, I threw out Marion Brown and Wilson, the sophomore stud slot at Florida. Big time.
Okay, well, here's another one that somebody mentioned to us and we need to put out there. Torrey Horton. He's from Colorado State. He almost went in the NFL draft. And if you saw them play Colorado last year, he lit them up.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people lit Colorado up, but he was legitimately a big-time player in that game. So I mentioned that because I went back to thinking, oh, what are they going to have to do? And I was thinking about non-conference. And the first game, obviously, Colorado State. And so I wanted to mention Torrey Horton. He is going to be a guy that Texas has to play early that is very, very good.
He had 1,136 yards and 8 touchdowns last season and had one game where he had a 227-yard game.
Yeah, I think that may have been against Colorado. But yeah,
Utah Tech.
Oh, Utah Tech. Well,
same thing.
That's the same thing on defense last year, basically.
Yeah, same.
All right, we're going to move on to the next one here. And it is a super chat. Daniel Sheehan. Thank you, Daniel. He says, Jerry, I know Herman dips into the JUCO ranks sometimes. Why do you think Sark does not go to the JUCO ranks as well? I appreciate all the great work and hook'em.
That's actually a great topic in general. And here's part of the issue. No more SAT requirements. JUCO football's been hit hard. And then through the portal. Portal's almost JUCO from smaller schools. I mean, that's almost the same thing. You get a guy that's developed in college for a couple of years and you bring him in, and it's just like recruiting a JUCO guy in one sense. So JUCO football, I mean, not that there aren't really good players. I mean, you could go, if you live in Mississippi and go to JUCO games on Friday or Saturday, those are a lot of talent on the field now. Obviously, state of Arizona shut down JUCO football, right? So you lost that. California, I mean, how important is football in California anymore? Not that much. And then you have, obviously, the Kansas JUCOs. But again, with no SAT requirements, that's really hurt junior college football. And again, that just means more guys are getting into college out of high school. And even if those guys, some of those guys are mid-major guys, you just recruit those guys from the portal in 2 years. So it's the same thing. So I think JUCO football's almost been replaced from the Power 5 recruiting level in a lot of instances buy guys in the portal.
It's JC recruiting is almost over. I mean, I when I started this back in the 80s and 90s, or 90s really, when I started following it professionally, you would have K-State sign 15 to 17 junior college guys every year. Okay. Alabama, 4 or 5. Georgia, 4 or 5. Florida, same. Everybody around the country was signing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 junior college guys. Texas was a rare exception because of academic standards by comparison. But what has happened is junior college football, except on the West Coast, has been almost just completely decimated by complete lack of academic standards getting into big time schools now. There used to be something called Prop 48, where you had to make a certain score on the SAT or ACT. That's gone. I mean, they no longer consider the SAT or ACT as part of your, Nebraska was great, as part of your entry point. So literally, if you have a 2.5 core GPA, you're in with no stipulations. So that has hurt JUCO football, except on the West Coast, Jerry, where there are a lot of guys that have already qualified that just run through the cracks because they're first and second year football players no one's ever heard of. Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
Got Aaron Rodgers, what's his name? The Josh Allen. I mean,
they're still
qualify out of high school, but they go to California JUCOs because they're from small schools in the state of California. California is not recruited as heavily as Texas or Florida, so they're not canvassed as heavily by college coaches. And so some of those guys just slip into JUCOs out there and end up being great players.
Yeah, and there's still some hidden gems in Northern California. Because when I was at ESPN Under Armour, we had some really good kids come to the NorCal Under Armour camp we put on a couple of years that weren't at the time highly recruited at all. You still have some. That's one little pocket in this country that still got some hidden gems in it. A lot of those guys, to Bobby's point, end up going JUCO and then Power 5 a couple of years after that.
A lot of them don't even use huddle either.
Yeah.
By the way, their teams don't. So it's harder for the colleges to latch onto them.
All right. Our next question here from Michael Schuler on Texas football. Any information on the garage sale the team runs prior to the spring game? Bobby, have you seen an announcement on that? I know sometimes they, get rid of their older stuff.
Blake, you took your son last year to stand in line for the signature. Remember that?
Yes.
I'm sure Chris Del Conte has something like that planned. Let me look into that, and we'll try to get down to it and see what we can do and find out what all the plans are. Usually about a week ahead of time. So coming up next week, they'll put a dossier, like an agenda out for everybody. Signatures start at 9 a.m. Then the midway opens on Bevo Boulevard at 10. Yeah, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They do a good job of pushing that, but right now, Michael, I don't think they have. I don't think they put that out quite yet. I'll ask, maybe ask them and see if we can get a little information ahead of time for y'all.
All right. Our next question is going to come from Antoine. And he says, do we think at least 7 players don't redshirt?
Oh, I don't think 7. I think for sure 7 will play.
Yeah.
It's too good.
We can go down that list pretty quick. Both the running backs will probably play. And I'm not sitting here saying they're playing against Michigan, but they're going to play. Wine Wingo's going to play, right? Butler's possibility to play. On the defense, obviously Colin Simmons. Both safeties are going to play. One of the corners is going to have to play. So yeah, that number is going past that. I would say, I bet that
January
going to play.
Colin Simmons is going to play.
Yeah, it's going to go over 10.
Jordan Washington, maybe. And they'll be in excess of 7 that play.
Yeah. And by the way, again, I think one of the most interesting things Sark talked about in his February signing day press conference was the need to play more guys and more young guys with this 12, eventually 14, and eventually 16 team playoff coming up. is you have to get those guys experience earlier, because the health of a team, staying healthy, building that depth is so important with almost what's going to be an NFL season if you're in the playoffs. So, and you win a game in the playoffs. So I do think you're going to see more of those guys play, not less.
All right. Well, Bobby, why don't you tell the folks out there more about Autograph, our newest sponsor?
Yep, absolutely. Autograph is, they've done something now. I want y'all to listen up to this, because this is going to be a little bit different than the last reads I've done for them. And it includes tickets to the Michigan game. So Blake his ears even popped up a little bit when I said that. All right, Autograph. We're pumped for the game in Ann Arbor. Would you like the chance to win $4 tickets to the Big House this fall against Michigan in honor of our 4 national championships, hopefully 5 in 2024? These tickets are retailing for $600 plus. If so, listen up. Our partner Autograph is dropping a pair of tickets on April 18 at 12 p.m. Pacific in their app. All you need to do is download the app and refer one friend successfully. User download plus signups from Wednesday, April 3rd, which was yesterday, to Thursday, April 18th by 9 o'clock Pacific to be eligible. So that means you have to download the app and get somebody to sign up with you. For those that are new, Autograph is where real Longhorn fans get unreal rewards by bringing fan content and communities into one place. Autograph is the first app that recognizes and rewards fans, turning their passion into access and experiences. Co-founded by Tom Brady on the belief that devotion should be rewarded and the future of fandom belongs to the fans. Scan to download the free Autograph app in the App Store and use referral code ONTEXAS. That's referral code ONTEXAS. Join us and see where your fandom takes you. Hopefully, Ann Arbor this fall for $4 a ticket. They did that special for the folks here at Coffee and Football and On Texas Football. Appreciate them doing that. Again, if you download the app and get someone else to do it, you get a chance to win tickets to the game in Ann Arbor.
And I just want to say, after this episode of Coffee and Football, or if you're listening on the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if you look down in the description, we will have a link that will allow you to get hooked up with Autograph, make it a little bit easier on you as well.
Hey, Blake, Casey842 has a question that we need to address. I think it's a great question and topic.
All right. Casey says, I'm interested what future scheduling will look like out of conference with the extended playoffs. In my opinion, playing Powerhouse out of conference isn't needed, since you'll play 1 to 4 of them in postseason. I think that is a good point, guys.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm most excited about, honestly, and I don't know, I still think you want to play the marquee game, Bobby. I mean, look, you get into the playoffs. The playoffs going to eventually expand to 14, then 16, right? I love the idea of Michigan and Ohio State the next 3 years, I should say. That's great for Texas. That's great for college football. I don't want those games to go by the wayside. I really don't. I actually think they have even more value now, because one loss doesn't ruin your season. And now it makes it tougher, to be fair. But this playoff's not going to be at 12 very long. It's going to 14, then it's going to go to 16. It's going to be a progression. I don't know where you sit, Bobby. I want Texas to continue to play one of those marquee games in the non-conference every year.
Well, look, after Michigan this year, they go to Ohio State next year. Then they host Ohio State and Michigan back-to-back in the years that follow. Steve, I spoke a little bit to Chris Del Conte about this and asked him his mindset on scheduling. He's still going to go with one big one, he thinks.
Yeah.
That's his. Now, it's not set in stone, to be clear, right? But he's going to go. He thinks he's going to go with one big one outside of conference each and every year, because, to your point, Jerry, he thinks that's where Texas needs to be. It's nice to say that. I will add this. It's nice to say that when you have a coach and that is trying to push the roster like Sark is. Yeah. It wasn't nice when Tom Herman lost back-to-back to Maryland, right? Or Charlie Strong lost back-to-back to Cal. There's a difference. And so I think that he feels confident enough to go do that. Also, I would say that with all of the another thing that's happened with all of the conference maneuvering, it set free some out of conference games and shaken free out of conference games that people didn't necessarily have. So there's a little bit of free for all right now happening behind the scenes, trying to line up games. That's why you see Texas line up a Sam Houston State just a month ago for this next year. So because their games are being shaken up with the maneuvering around the conferences.
Our next question, fellas, is going to come from Space City Wrangler, and we're going to talk recruiting here for a minute. The June official visit lists are looking outstanding 3 years in a row now. What should we be looking for, as in who, as far as additional names to be added?
Good question. And that kind of goes with what Living Rent Free asked about Josh Petty and Nick Brooks. Obviously, Nick Brooks is going to be in for the spring game. April 20th is scheduled to be a June 14th through 16th official visit. Josh Petty, I exchanged messages with a person close to that recruitment. Josh Petty, the 4-star offensive lineman out of Roswell, Georgia, who was on campus March 22nd. That family is still looking at getting to Austin as a family, which it was just Josh on the unofficial visit with California Power. So once that family scheduled an unofficial visit, probably, around that spring game time, then they'll get to the possibility of an official visit there. I think after the spring evaluation period as well, I think we'll see Texas schedule in a couple more, 2 or 3 other defensive linemen for official visits. I mean, that could happen. Like Chase Sims from Richmond Randall, he's coming in this weekend. After that, if that conversation goes well, Kenny Baker's been by that school, but this will be the first time for Chase Sims to sit down and talk with Kenny Baker and Sark and the staff. You could see an official visit set up on a player like that. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just using him for reference. It wouldn't shock me. Jonathan Cunningham at North Crowley, the linebacker, he's coming in April 11th, same day Jackson Blackwell, the defensive lineman from Lorena, is coming in. You could see an official visit scheduled there with a Jonathan Cunningham at linebacker potentially. So I do think that number of official visitors is going to go over 40. It sits around 33 or 34 right now. Look, Jordan Davison hasn't announced his official visit date. I'm betting 21st through 23rd. DeCorian Moore has his dates, hasn't released them yet like Jordan Davison. They'll do that on their own time. I'm betting that's June 21st through 23rd as well. So there's a couple of guys that aren't even on that list that are going to make the official visit to Texas in June. So that number is going to go over 40. It's how close to 50 is it going to get?
Good stuff. And then I know you talked about the Corian. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Jerry.
When we get a chance after the Corian, that Ben, the question 849 from Ben, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he asked that yesterday, so we need to address that.
Okay, we'll get to that one in just a second. I know you talked about the Corian more just a moment ago, but Cleek Lockett, do you have any notes there that people should be aware of?
Look, scheduled to be in this weekend, June 21st through 23rd official visit. I know a lot's going to be said about these kids right now, but these processes are going to play out. DeCorian Moore will be in town this weekend with family. He'll be back April 20th for the spring game. Obviously, he hasn't announced that June official visit date or any of his dates yet, but I'll be surprised, I guess, if it's not the 21st through 23rd. I mean, Texas has 2 big weekends. It's going to be one of those weekends. So I'm betting on the 21st through 23rd there, but we'll see when DeCorian releases that, and we'll see when Jordan Davison releases those dates. But wide receivers, I mean, this weekend, that unofficial visitors list of wide receiver. You want to talk about a 4x100 team if you gave him a baton and sent him to the track. I mean, DeCorian Moore, Kelshawn Johnson, Jamie French, and Kalik Lockett. I mean, it's a pretty good group of wideouts going to be in Austin Saturday. And if they're ever photographed next to each other, that's going to be a heck of a picture. That's a few future NFL draft picks at wide receiver if they do it right.
Let me ask you this, Jerry. Any I don't want to call them any dark horses at receiver for you for Texas that you think Texas likes that might also be in play that not everybody's focused on at this point?
Yeah, I think there's so much depth at receiver in Texas. It's almost like offensive line. Devin Coleman really came on once his junior tape at guard got out. I mean, I like Emmanuel Choice. I know Texas does like Emmanuel Choice. Sometimes it's just a numbers game, you know. I mean, and we'll see. Maybe something gets scheduled there.
And he's out of Lancaster. He's out of Lancaster.
Yeah, 6'4.5" receiver out of Lancaster. 110 hurdle guy. Had really good junior tape. He's got Oklahoma scheduled. 2 or 3 others. TCU scheduled for official visits. USC is bringing him in. So Oklahoma, USC are bringing him in. I mean, he's a really talented receiver. It's a deep year at Texas on the offensive line and at wide receiver. I mean, really deep year. One of the guys that I'm also watching, not receiver, but Aiden Anding, the corner out of Ruston. Texas offered him March 28th. He got on the phone. I can't remember what day it was now. I guess Monday night with Steve Sarkisian for the first time. Well, he's coming in April 6th in 2 days. The corner out of Ruston, Louisiana, who blew up at the Under Armour camp in Dallas, was a basketball guy for 3 years and track guy, long jumps 22.5, closing on 23 feet. One of the best shooters, guards in the state of Louisiana in that 25 class. But he's now transitioning to football. First year playing high school football last year at Ruston High, and he's coming in Saturday. And it won't shock me if an official visit doesn't follow because he's pretty impressive on tape.
One of the other receivers I wanted to add, and that I loved his video, by the way. That talk about evaluating. He just started playing football, right? Because he was a basketball player.
Yeah.
Andy. Yeah. All right. Dalen McCutcheon was the other guy I wanted to ask you about because I know he's got a visit set to Texas.
Yep.
But he's not a guy that's talked about a lot.
Yeah. A really good route runner, smooth route runner, right? Kind of maybe in the mold of not Decory Moore, DeAndre Moore, a little bit in the mold of that. Just a smooth route runner, smooth mover. Has Ohio State, has a couple others set up. Look, another guy that Texas likes. He was in last Friday for an unofficial visit, and he will be back June 14th through 16th for an official visit. That weekend will be Andrew Marsh, Kelshawn Johnson, and Dalen McCutcheon for sure at wide receiver. Somebody mentioned Jamie French is in town tomorrow. That is correct. The 7-on-7 team, they have a tournament in Dallas this weekend. So a lot of those guys will be on campus Friday, maybe a little bit Saturday before they head up to that 7-on-7 tournament. So a lot of those kids are flying in to Texas on Friday.
Okay, y'all, we have a super chat here. And by the way, Jay Lee, I have not skipped your super chat, but I was asking for a clarification on something. So if you see that, please let me know and then I'll read it. But we have a super chat here from Glenn Garza. Thank you, Glenn, for the super chat. He says, I'm not usually on here live. I enjoy your shows. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate you, buddy.
And then we're going to get to that question here that Jerry referenced a second ago from Ben. And he says, Bobby Jerry, any recent notes on Jalen Gilbo and what his role could be for this 2024 team?
The note I have is that he's been looking good. Like Jerry and I always talk about Gilbo. He's one of the more natural defensive backs on the team, if not maybe the most natural. He and Malik Muhammad kind of make it look. They don't necessarily they're not the fastest, right, Jerry? They're not the biggest, but they're a little bit, they got some baller to them. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And Gilbo was that way early in his career. Then he got injured. Okay. He did not have a great year last year. He did not come back strong from the injury. Now, whether that's he didn't really attack his injury the way you're supposed to, because you got to remember that's his first time ever being truly injured. A lot of these guys don't take injuries that way, and then they get older and they regret not doing it. Well, apparently he took working out to a different level this past year, basically, after he figured out that he wasn't back 100%. And he's looked really, really good. What is his role? Well, there's a couple things here. Jahdae Barron is also working at corner right now to try to give the corner room a little depth. Plus, Jahdae wants to be considered a corner when it comes time for the NFL draft. If that's the case, I don't think there's any doubt that Jalen Gilbo is the starter at star or plays the backup reps or whatever you want to call. And if they go to 6 DBs and run a dime package, I don't think there's any doubt right now that Jalen Gilbo is the first one that comes in. I mean, he's having a good spring, or at least he was a week ago when I last talked to somebody specifically about him. And furthermore, he is physically back in the saddle, as opposed to last year where he was a little encumbered by a brace at times and just wasn't 100% yet.
And by the way, please do, Shane Lawler, please hit that like and subscribe button. We have a lot of people from Twitter watching the show these days. So jump on in, subscribe, and like, please do that for us. By the way, and Jalen Gilbo, one thing about him, look, going back to when I saw him in high school, he's one of those competitive Golden Triangle area kids, man. I mean, very competitive kid. And I jokingly said he's so good, Gary Patterson tried to recruit him twice at TCU. So he's a very talented player. And he's a competitive guy. I think the biggest thing for some of these guys is to have patience for a little more time here, and your day will come at the University of Texas. So patience is tested, especially this spring with kids. If they get through that part of it and really just continue to buy in on the process, then I think some really good things are going to happen on campus on the 40 for those guys. Just got to have a little patience.
Okay, I got the clarification in from Jay Lee now, so I'm going to ask the super chat because he wrote the word terrible, but I thought he meant tearing it up, so I just wanted to make sure. But he said, I was sad that we never got to see Troy O'Meara healthy at Texas. Arizona State is reporting that him and Jake Smith are tearing it up in spring ball.
Well, I was out in Phoenix a few weeks ago, and I actually kind of watched from afar one of their spring workouts, and I can say that Jake Smith looked really good. I mean, he's going to have a really good year at Arizona State. And Troy O'Meara looks better, looks really good, like he always has physically, moving with more confidence. Not that O'Meara fit what Sark recruits at receiver. That was always kind of a deal there, right? But those guys are going to have good years at Arizona State, and especially their first year in the Big 12. I think Jake Smith could have a big year.
They've never been devoid of or lacked talent, Jerry.
No.
O'Meara was really came out of the box hot and then got injured 2 years in a row with an ACL. So, I mean, I hate that for the kid. Then he got, beat out by the Adonai Mitchells and Xavier Worthies and Jordan Whittingtons. And he had some movement issues at Texas and moved on to Arizona State. Good for him. And then Jake Smith went from Texas to USC. I think he may just be becoming an adult. You know what I mean? I mean, he came out of high school with all these accolades, kind of overwhelming, and then, just had a 2 or 3 year span where he probably wasn't getting everything together. I wish those guys nothing but the best. Prince Dorba is out there too. Don't forget him.
Clayton Smith from Texas High, who was at OU, transferred out there, had a really good year. Yeah. The one thing I'll say for Smith and O'Meara out there, if anybody still tunes in to Big 12 football next year, Jaden Rashada is a very talented quarterback, very talented freshman quarterback at ASU. He was small in stature, almost like Colt when he was younger. So keeping him healthy is the key for ASU. If Rashada has a healthy season, those guys are going to have a chance to put up some pretty decent numbers. Offensive line, the interesting thing. Offensive
wait a minute. What is this? Hold on a second. Travis Scott is going to be at UT today?
Yeah. By the way, for those teams, and this is why what I was saying is for Arizona State and USC, there's a reason USC is recruiting so many offensive linemen in Texas. Man, the offensive linemen aren't there in California right now. The depth in that state on the offensive line, there's Brandon Baker, right? But the depth. The hardest thing for those programs to do is find the offensive linemen they need.
Okay, y'all. Before we move on, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell folks out there about Joe Brown.
Yeah, Joe Brown is actually the mortgage broker professional that you need in your life. He is a guy that you want to confide in and work with. I actually used Joe to write my first mortgage more than 25 years ago. He has 30 plus years experience. He is a proud Navy veteran and a devout Texas Longhorn fan. Give him a call, 512-663-4744. That's 512-663-4744. If you're looking for a mortgage, that is going to be one of the biggest decisions you ever make. So you want someone with a lot of experience around it. Joe Brown, 512-663-4744. By the way, Joe, I have paid off that mortgage. So I'm happy about that.
My apologies, I couldn't find the banner there for a second. So, okay, this next question, fellas, is going to be from Ryan Nelson. He says, when the Big Ten and SEC merge together, do you think they need to add an extra regular season or two game, especially now with the pay-to-play need more volume?
So, look, the Athletic wrote a story yesterday about a group trying to create the top 80 or top 70 schools. The problem with the top 70 is really it's the top 40. And so you have and no offense to Syracuse, good school. No, I mean, I actually like Syracuse. All the history with Jim Brown, Floyd Little, Ernie, I mean, all those guys. Donovan McNabb even. My take on it is they are no longer in the top 40 programs in the country, or 44. That is all collected, and basketball takes a back seat as it relates to total revenue coming out of college sports. And so you have people like the guy from Syracuse trying to run and get involved in this collection or collective of 70 plus schools, when really the issue is it's 45 to 50. That's the problem. You have the wrong people trying to drive the bus. Who needs to be driving the bus are the Texases, the Notre Dames, the Alabamas, the USCs, the Floridas, LSU. I mean, teams that are committed to college football at the highest level, not Syracuse. Syracuse acts like they're committed to college football at the highest level, but they're really not. And I'm not trying to be rude about it.
They're trying to stay in the game.
You know, I try to say this until an organization, and this organization that I'm talking about that the Athletic talked about, is filled with people that aren't necessarily the higher rated programs of the Big 12 or the Big 10 and the SEC, the two conferences that really dictate how college sports goes and college football in particular. Until those two get together and truly position or say something about what they want, all of this other stuff is just going to be brouhaha, it's going to be bunk. Until the SEC and Big Ten get together and actually push something forward, the rest of it, you might as well be just whistling Dixie, because it's not going to happen. Because people are going to try to get in and make it an 80-team league. Well, there's a reason NFL is really good with 32 teams, right? It's not more is better. And that's part of the problem with the NCAA right now. They've got 130 Division I teams. How is Colorado State the same as Texas? It's not. Okay. How is Akron the same as Texas? It's not. So stop trying to put a round peg in a square hole. Try to separate them like they're really supposed to.
By the way, that might be that might be a good graphic one day, is the teams that are going to be fighting to stay in. It might be a good topic. Who's going to be fighting to really stay in these two super conferences, have a shot at it? I think that's going to be kind of one of the fascinating things to watch. Before our next question, I know we have a super chat, Blake. I've had a few questions about silent commitments. I'm going to say this. I think there's guys that have, in their own way, have told Texas, I'm coming. I'm just going through the process, right? I'm going to be at Texas, right? I think after this weekend, that number will probably grow a little bit.
Interesting.
Texas is not struggling in recruiting.
Texas is not pushing for them to go public.
That's right.
They don't care in that regard. I mean, Sark literally doesn't. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't want some momentum every so often, et cetera, and they will do that when the time comes. But, I mean, I think they're really, to Jerry's point, I think they're going to get some guys in the boat in their mind this weekend. And then they won't actually come to pass. Maybe one or two do, but they won't actually come to pass until that June timeframe, where, frankly, the official visits begin to stop. After everybody's seen everybody, and then you commit to Texas, it means a little more. Committing to somebody and then going and visiting a bunch of places, what does that really mean?
Watch what happens with all these kids that committed to USC. Well, I was told yesterday one of the kids that committed within the last 2 weeks is about to decommit already. I mean, it's just like, I think Sark and that they know what they're doing in recruiting.
We're going to get to that super chat you alluded to, Jerry, and that's from UT Boy. And he says, hook 'em for life. I'm working on a new happy dance. Thanks for your unique, if I'll get it out here in a second, thoughts and perspective on our school. Definitely half full, not half empty. We are going to the woodshed with folks.
We'll let you break out that happy dance at Terry Black's next year before Texas OU.
Got plenty of time to work on it. Oh, man. All right, guys, we got a lot of spring football questions that we need to get to. So we're just going to start with this one from Travis. And he says, who are y'all looking to hear the most about in the scrimmage on Saturday?
For me, it's Quinn and Arch. I know it's such a quarterback-driven offense, right? And then I want to hear about the left guard position. And I want to hear about the defensive tackle rotation. I want to see where Savea is in that right now. I think he's running third with the second team. So my take on that is quarterback. I know what the running backs can do. I think I'm going to hear a little bit more about Baxter and Blue, et cetera. Quarterback improvement, offensive line rotation, interior defensive line. Those are the three primaries for me. Jerry, what about you?
Yeah, I think that maybe a little bit at linebacker. What's going on there depth wise? I'm established on safety. I think it's going to be the most improved position in the program. Maybe edge second, and edge is already good. I'm thinking more linebackers. Piggybacking off of what you said. And there's a guy like Christian Clark. Do we continue to hear more about him? Because this is scrimmage day, right? So the scrimmage different from practices, and sometimes in the scrimmage, and I know they go live, but look, for running backs, those scrimmages are when the instinctive guys, those guys that they really, the physical runners, they really kind of tend to rise a little bit during the scrimmages. So Christian Clark, Jarrett Gibson both had good springs. Hearing Christian Clark's done some really good things. I'm interested because they're going to get a lot of reps Saturday. So we'll see what happens there. So there was a question up here as well I was going to answer. Hold on.
Hey guys, let me say this. I just got a text from CJ. CJ's headed over there to Moncrief Newhouse for the 11 o'clock press conference. He said he had to start getting ready early. Apparently that Travis Scott deal at the university has got the entire Austin downtown area near the university backed up with traffic.
Yeah.
So apparently this is a cultural event that's going on at UT that's causing some backed up traffic around the city of Austin today.
And what it is his Cactus Jack apparel for the University of Texas drops today. And so he's making an appearance to kind of promote that and everything. And so that's what all the hoopla is about. Go ahead, Jerry.
King Me 907. How far does Decory Moore's recruitment go, summer or winter? I think before senior season for sure. I'd be surprised because look, I mean, multiple things there. He's been recruited nationally heavily for a long time. He'll get out in June, make those final trips around. He'll make these trips this spring. Got a lot of 7-on-7 stuff coming. But here's the thing. Always remember this about Duncanville. Reggie Samples, and I don't disagree with him on this, by the way. He doesn't let guys really take trips in season. And if you're at a program like Duncanville, you have to be that way. Mater Dei only lets their kids go on off weeks. Duncanville, the same thing. Because when you have 30 Division I recruits, they'll be scattered around America every weekend. So when you have that many players, you can't. You have to let those kids know, okay, get through your process before the season, and let's concentrate on the season. We can't have 30 players scattered around the country every weekend.
It'd be like herding cats.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, it's like herding cats. Good luck.
Yeah. So, UT boy bought his Friendswood season tickets yesterday. Basketball, volleyball, football. Probably not football right now. So that's the key there. I think Decory Moore, before his senior season, will be done with the recruiting process. It's my opinion.
This next question is going to come from King Me. What areas still need improvement during spring ball?
I certainly think that every single area on the team does. First of all, today is 8 practice, by the way, for the whole for spring ball. So they're at exactly the midway point. There are 15 total practices for spring ball. I don't think there's a single one that doesn't need improvement. Some of them are different areas of improvement. Some of them need an influx of talent. I think defensive tackle is one of them. Some of them need to hone their skills better. Secondary would be one. Communication between corner and safety, etc. Guys like Anthony Hill still have a ways to go to become the most reliable guy, not just a good player, right? So really, I think it's almost an unfair question in some ways, King Me, in that you're right. There's all areas of improvement, but they're all different types of areas of improvement, right? I mean, some just need more talent. Some need more time. Some need more schooling. It's kind of and then some just need tweaks. Quinn Ewers right now is trying to just get little tweaks, right? Versus someone like Jelani McDonald, who's at safety and he's drinking from a fire hose because it's his first full year or full spring practice at safety. So it's just all of them need improvement at this point, in my opinion, and can improve. By the way, there's not a perfect player on this team right now.
Trez Blogs has a good one. What about SEC running back? I think piggybacking off of the wide receiver. SEC at running back is interesting this year. Not a ton. Like if you look like an ESPN, for instance, top 10 running backs in college football right now returning. The only SEC guy mentioned in that list is Trevor Etienne at Georgia, which just got into a little trouble to transfer from Florida. But look, SEC, there's going to be a lot of talent at running back, but it's going to be a little younger at running back in that conference this year. But there's some talented players, but they may not be at the top of those lists starting the season. Obviously Ohio State has the best running back duo in the country, bar none, not even close, right? With Henderson and Junkins. But then the SEC is going to be really good at running back, but they may not be the household names to start the season. So guys like a Cedric Baxter, some of those young guys going into year 2, right? Or Jaden Blue going from year 2 to year 3 if he makes a big jump as a runner. We're going to see some new names pop up, some fresh names pop up that are going to be added to these lists.
Ruben Owens looked good as a freshman at A&M, I thought. In
Le'Veon Moss, good player.
Yeah, I mean, LSU. There are going to be running backs that are good players in the SEC. That's just the reality. The best one, I don't know that there's a Heisman winner right now.
No.
Our next question from Living Rent Free in UT. Should we be concerned with any of the interior defensive linemen getting handled in spring practices, or is our offensive line just that good?
I try to be very I border on the pessimistic at times. I will admit that. Okay. They have to get better at interior defensive line, period. The guys aren't on campus to be a dominant or even a plus defensive line in the SEC. They're not on campus. Now, maybe 12 games in, if Alex January comes, they're just not on campus right now. So I don't think it's a zero-sum game there. Yes, the offensive line is going to be good. We know that. Okay. But we've identified, and the coaches have identified it, they have to get better on the interior defensive line. They're going to be fine at the edge. I really do believe that.
By the way, I think we need to kind of put this 2 ways, though. They have to anchoring against the run. They're going to be fine as a disruptive unit. Okay, they're going to actually be really good as a disruptive unit. It's the anchoring in those games where people can really line up and run the ball at you.
Well, yeah, you can't move your defensive tackle into the linebackers. Your nose guard can't end up hitting, clipping Anthony Hill's and David Benda's knees. And that could happen if they don't get the right people. So, yes, I mean, it's a very serious thing, in my opinion. Doesn't mean that they're going to lose 5 games because of it.
No.
But,
yeah,
it could be the difference between going to the playoff and not.
And I want to say that this is one thing I want to say. By the way, always be cautious of the catchy headlines in spring practice. I'll say that. Look, I think the Texas D line's probably better than even Sark addressed it at press conference. Look, Texas offensive line's grown up. I think Texas defensive line will be okay. They need an adult in the room over the ball. I do believe that. But I think they're probably a little better than they're going to be given credit for. But they do need to have an addition or two.
Okay, sorry, I was answering a question in the chat here. This next question, guys, is going to come from Bobby Vetronic. He says, do we have our punter situated yet?
No, I mean, Ian Ratliff, really good punter, actually, was a walk-on at Texas. He's a Power 5 level punter out of Atascocita High. Mike O'Kern from STA, St. Thomas Aquinas. He's not an early enrollee. He'll be coming in June. And then we'll see if they do anything in the portal there.
And then David Keith Williams says, Jerry, Texas got one 5-star receiver in 23, Jonte Cook. They got one 5-star wide receiver in 24, Ryan Wingo. Can they get 2 5-star wide receivers in the 2025 recruiting class?
I would say the odds are no on that. It just, look, when you're getting these recruitments, I mean, if you just think about Jamie French, you're battling and you're coming from behind in this right now. Ohio State, Miami, Florida State, right? He was a one-time Alabama commitment. I mean, so you're going to Jacksonville to recruit, and he may not even be ranked a 5-star right now. I don't even know where he's ranked nationally on your composites or whatever. When I watch him, he's right there. But just think about the recruitment you got into there. In Texas, real battles for these guys. I mean, so I think you're going to win your share. You're not going to get the top 3 guys on the board. I don't think that's going to happen. And then you have guys that look, maybe they're ranked 100, 150 in the country. In their senior year, they may be knocking on the door, or maybe, they're underrated. It happens. I still think I lean the 1 because I think there's too many national battles there, and you're not going to get all those guys.
All right, y'all, before we move on, Bobby, can you tell folks out there about Rick Vavro and Austin Underground one last time?
Yeah, since 2004, Austin Underground has specialized in difficult commercial installations. The team's engineering background gives Austin Underground the ability to perform work other firms often consider too risky. So if you're looking or needing commercial integration underground, give Rick Vavro and his team a shot. They offer end-to-end client experience, including seamless communication, budgeting, staffing, and top-notch trade partners. And most importantly, they produce solid quality work each and every time. Thank you to our Thursday sponsor, Austin Underground of Coffee and Football. Thanks, Rick.
And we got time for just a couple of more questions before we have to get out of here. We're going to take this one from Tim Samuels. He says, good morning, gentlemen, from Richland Chambers Lake. Texas scoring defense last year was 18.93 per game allowance. Would you guys take the over or under on that in 2024?
Until defensive line is addressed, I'm going over, and I may even go over regardless.
I was going to go over regardless. I think a little barely over regardless. That's just where I come out. I think Texas is going to face a little bit better athletes and couple more guys that can score some touchdowns, and it's slightly tougher schedule.
And then Phil asks, what type of plays that are successful in the Big 12 do you think Sark could use in the SEC that maybe those defenses aren't accustomed to seeing? Is that even such a thing anymore?
Yeah, it is, because it's more spread. I mean, look, Sark does a good job when he wants to really spread you out, of really spreading you out. Like, they don't just run 3 receivers to a side, and they try to spread you horizontally and vertically simultaneously. That's why the over routes are so effective for him. One of the reasons why. I think that Sark really relies on the deep play action, where a lot of SEC teams they don't do the soft roll to one side with it. They just do a straight drop back. That can be a little bit different than what teams in the SEC see on a weekly basis. A lot of teams in the SEC don't even try that because they don't have the offensive line. or the receivers really to get vertical. So a little bit of stuff like that, but I don't think it's going to be whole hog different by any stretch.
I expect to see more, as Rod calls it, pony package, a little more two back next year because the edge talent is different. I expect to see more, and the running backs at Texas are really good out of the backfield. And if we were talking about that the other day, the Tua years under Sark, and then the Mac Jones year. That Mac Jones year, they had 38 more completions on that team, the running backs, tight ends, than they did under Tua. I think Texas is going to have use more two back this year because they're so good out of the backfield, and the edge talent in the SEC gets to you a little quicker.
Texas is practicing today at DKR. Tomorrow or Saturday will also be at DKR, the scrimmage. They'll have, we think 40 to 50 recruits in, along with families. It should be a big affair, Jerry, for the Longhorns. I want to skip the line here and ask you this question. How many recruits in total? How many guys that you really think are going to be priorities for Texas? Are they only inviting guys potentially that are priorities for them at this point in time in recruiting?
Not only. There will be a few other guys that come in, like an Ike Okafor, a kid that Texas is kind of watching, a D lineman that plays with Smith or Rogbo. He's got official visit scheduled to Arizona State, Cal, I believe, somebody else. Good player. Guys that you'll continue to monitor. A few of those guys will be in as Saturday as well. But most of it's priority targets, though. I mean, look at quarterback Troy Hume, 2026 coming in, KJ Lacey, 2025, right? I mean, that's kind of the level we're talking about here. And a lot of the 2026 kids will be coming in April 13th weekend, right? So that's the following weekend. But so it's mostly priority targets, but there will be a few guys mix in. A Chase Sims from Richmond Randall, who, again, we mentioned that earlier. This is the first time he's really going to sit down with Steve Sarkisian and that staff, the whole defensive staff, right? So that's a guy who Texas has offered. They haven't set him up for an official visit, but we'll see what happens after Saturday. The corner, Aiden Anding, same thing out of Ruston, a little newer on the radar. So they're not all top priority targets right now. I think there's going to be 2 or 3 kids out of this weekend that will end up setting up official visits to Texas in June that currently do not.
And guys, this will be the last question for today. An interesting one. King Me says, comparing their 3 years, how much have you enjoyed covering the Sark era versus Strong and Herman? And Bobby's rolling his eyes. Go ahead, Bobby.
Look, it's like daylight and dark. I mean, I was, I've been a Texas fan all my life, basically. I'm 54 years old, went to Texas, and have seen the highs and lows. The difference right now, and I do feel like Charlie Strong did a good job of recruiting at times and kind of filled the cupboard a little bit. And then Tom Herman, I thought, was a better coach than Charlie Strong, but not as good a roster constructor, if that makes sense to you. Like, I thought Tom was actually a good X's and O's guy generally, but he just had too much attrition. The difference has been that Sark has done both, and he's been very straightforward to deal with. One of the things I would say to y'all and I mentioned this yesterday about what you look for in head coaches is consistency and leadership. Sark's been consistent from day one with the media. I mean, not overly aggressive. Hey, how you doing? But cordial enough. And he's been that way with his team. And I think he's just been who he is. And I think I think that if anything happened, it was the Arkansas game in 2021 that changed his trajectory at Texas. I think he thought Texas would be a little bit easier a job at the outset, and then Arkansas happened, and he had to make a change at quarterback. And since that time, I've seen a guy that's just laser focused on never letting a game like Arkansas happen again, to be honest. And so it's been a pleasure to work and follow the Longhorns the last 2.5 years. To be honest, after that 8-5 season, I was excited because I could tell that they were on the come a little bit, and I still feel that way. And so comparing it to Strong and Herman, you felt like you were always on a slippery slope with those guys in some regard, whether it was personnel with Herman or play calling and game day with Strong. You just always felt like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
I'll say this. I'll always remember the 2016 class under Charlie Strong. From my job perspective, was so much fun. I mean, like, you want to talk about the guy that recruited late now. I mean, Charlie Strong, I mean, if you just go back and look at that class, and then what happened with the Baylor fallout with Devin Duvernay, Patrick Hudson, JP Urquidez, that was a fun. I mean, that 2016 class ended up with 8 NFL guys in it, maybe 9. That was one of the more fun classes or recruiting cycles that I've had. And I was doing the ESPN National at the time, but that was still so much fun to cover that class. Charlie was fun in recruiting because it went so late into the night and up to signing day.
They signed PJ. They signed PJ Locke, who's now a 4-year pro, and he never even visited Texas.
Yeah,
out of Beaumont Central.
And I think there's, I don't know, don't bring it up, Blake, but there's been a couple of people maybe say Charlie was set up to fail. Look,
oh, come on,
that's not true. Charlie Strong didn't know who to hire when he was hired at Texas. That's kind of my thought, and I love Charlie. Charlie in Texas were never a good fit. I mean, he didn't know who to hire at Texas. I mean, he knew how to hire to recruit the state of Florida at Louisville, right? He was as DC under Florida. He's one of the best recruiters that state's ever had. I mean, he recruited 6 guys off that Lakeland team that went to Florida on those national championship teams, the Pouncey twins, Rainey, all those guys. They all went to the NFL. But when he got the Texas job, look, I almost put that on Texas for hiring him in a way. That wasn't the fit. He didn't know who to hire on his staff at Texas. So when you don't know who to hire on your staff, when you're hired at a blue blood, your chances of success are pretty low to start.
Brutal. He was not set up to fail. He wasn't put in the perfect position, but he was in no means, by no means, given the keys to the keys to the kingdom, and then asked to have 3 consecutive losing seasons. So get that. I mean, that has been some people have said that from the outset, and it's been bunked from the outset.
Yeah.
Charlie Strong wrote his own obituary at Texas. Period.
I'm going to tell people a story here on this. When Charlie was hired, somebody that worked with him in the past, they called me, said, "What does he need to do to be successful?" And I said, "Well, there's a quarterback up at Allen, Texas, that's really good, and everybody thinks he's going to go to A&M because his dad was a great player at A&M." I said, what people very little didn't know at that time was maybe the people around him didn't want him to go there. Texas did not reach out, and Bruce Chambers remained on the staff, did not reach out to Kevin Murray and his family for 100 days after Charlie was hired. That's why you fail, guys. I'm just here to tell you. That's why you fail.
Good stuff. Good.
That's not being set up to fail.
Great point. Well, that was an interesting segment to end on. Very informative. Strong opinions from you both, and got to say I agree with both of them. Guys, before we get out of here, anything y'all are working on? Jerry, y'all going anywhere today? Anything like that? People
not on the road today. I'm going to have some stuff at ontexasfootball.com from travel yesterday. Some updates on some of those guys: Elijah Barnes, Corey and Moore, Jordan Coleman, some of those guys. So on texasfootball.com, we'll have a little bit more on that around lunchtime. And then just checking in with kids, seeing if there's been any changes coming up for the April 6th visit days. Obviously, the players will meet with the media. CJ will be there after practice today, so we'll have that on TexasFootball.com as well.
Winning drive today at 4:30 with Bob, CJ, and Rod. CJ will be able to talk to you a little bit about what the kids said post-practice, players said post-practice. Additionally, spring, one of the first true scrimmages of spring will be on Saturday. So we'll be looking forward to that as well.
Be sure to, as BFL TexX says, like and subscribe if you haven't already. We would appreciate that. Ring the bell so you're notified anytime we post a video or go live. That way you don't miss anything, especially any breaking news, or as Jerry has been talking about, recruiting is getting hot. So you want to be sure to be paying attention to that, and no better way to do that than liking and subscribing. And head on over to ontexasfootball.com to continue that discussion. So we want to thank our sponsors today, Rick Vavro and Austin Underground, along with Autograph and Jim Brown. And so, yeah, for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.
Hook 'em, guys.